What if I told you that every major war America ever fought wasn't just a reaction to chaos, but a well-crafted plan? That behind every battlefield, every heroic speech, every flag-waving parade, there were boardroom meetings, private conversations, and silent handshakes between the powerful. That wars weren't started, they were sold. To you, to your family, to your history books. Because once you dig deep enough, a pattern emerges, one so disturbing, so obvious in hindsight, that it completely rewrites what you thought you knew about American history. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a pattern. A documented, deliberate strategy played again and again across generations. And today we're going to trace it war by war, from the 1800s to the modern era, from hidden provocations to public justifications, and the invisible profiteers pulling strings behind the curtain. Let's start where the dominoes began falling. The year 1846. The United States wanted expansion, Texas, California, and vast western lands held by Mexico. But Congress, not on board, public opinion divided. So President James K. Polk used a trick. He sent U.S. troops into disputed territory between the Nueces River and the Rio Grande, knowing full well it would provoke a military response. Mexico fired. American soldiers died, and boom, Polk had his excuse. We have been invaded on our own soil, he declared. Just like that, war began. But here's the part they don't teach in school. Polk had already sent orders to seize California and occupy key Mexican ports before Congress even approved war. It wasn't about defense, it was about acquisition. It was about empire, and it worked. The U.S. took more than half of Mexico's land, territory that would become modern-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and more. Next chapter, 1898, the Spanish-American War. The public had little appetite for war. Until something happened. The USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor. 260 American sailors died. Newspapers scream, remember the Maine. To hell with Spain. But here's the twist. Modern naval investigations show the ship likely exploded from an internal fire, not a Spanish attack. Still, it was enough to push a reluctant public into war. And once again, America liberated territories and never left Cuba. Puerto Rico, Guam, the Philippines. The U.S. emerged as a Pacific power, not by accident, but by design. President McKinley had already sent troops and ships before the war began. Just like Polk, he provoked then capitalized. But who benefited? Steel manufacturers, railroad tycoons, sugar barons, and the newspaper empires of Hearst and Pulitzer, who quite literally fabricated stories to enrage the public and sell papers. Now jump to 1915. World War I, the U.S. claimed neutrality. But behind the scenes, American banks, especially J.P. Morgan & Co., had lent billions to the British and French. If the Allies lost, those loans would default. So when the British ship RMS Lusitania was sunk by a German U-boat, killing 128 Americans, public outrage surged. But here's what they left out: the Lusitania was carrying munitions. Illegal under neutrality laws, Germany had warned passengers in American newspapers not to board it. It didn't matter. The story was spun. And 3 years later, America joined the war. Not to make the world safe for democracy, but to protect financial interests. And who profited? The same bankers who funded the Allies, the arms manufacturers, and the emerging military-industrial complex. Even the Federal Reserve, just created in 1913, got its first major stress test. After the war, the profits soared. But so did something else: public skepticism. Americans knew they'd been manipulated. So when World War II began, most wanted nothing to do with it. And that's where the story takes a darker turn, because by 1940, President Franklin D. Roosevelt wanted into the war. But he couldn't just declare it. The people wouldn't support it. So how do you force a nation into war? You provoke your enemy. FDR cut off Japan's access to oil, froze their financial assets, began moving Pacific fleets into position. American intelligence knew Japan was planning a strike. They cracked Japanese codes, intercepted communications, and yet, when the attack came on December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor was unprepared. 8 battleships were hit, over 400 Americans killed. A perfect national tragedy. But it gave Roosevelt everything he needed: full congressional support, public unity, and moral justification. But the cost: the lives of American soldiers deliberately left vulnerable. Even more disturbing, FDR had promised Churchill 6 months before that the U.S. would find a way to enter the war. He just didn't have the public support yet. The pattern repeats. Vietnam, the war that defined a generation. The Gulf of Tonkin incident was the trigger. In August 1964, President Lyndon Johnson claimed that North Vietnamese boats attacked U.S. ships. Congress responded by giving him full war powers. But here's what we know now: the second attack never happened. Even Defense Secretary Robert McNamara admitted it. The evidence was falsified. And yet the war began. Over 58,000 American soldiers died. Millions of Vietnamese were killed. And the war became a corporate goldmine. Helicopter manufacturers, napalm producers, defense contractors, even Pepsi and Coca-Cola had contracts in Vietnam. And in 1961, President Eisenhower warned of it all: beware the military-industrial complex. He said he knew. And yet, America kept feeding it. By 1980s, new enemies were needed. Enter the Middle East. In 1990, the Gulf War began after Iraq invaded Kuwait. But here's what's rarely mentioned. The U.S. encouraged Saddam Hussein to believe he could invade. American diplomat told him the U.S. had no opinion on Iraq's border dispute. Saddam saw it as a green light. Then came the spin. Iraqi soldiers were killing babies in incubators in Kuwaiti hospitals. That was the media story, the moral outrage. But the woman who gave that testimony, she was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador, coached by a PR firm. The entire story was a fabrication, and again, war was launched. Then came 9/11, the most traumatic attack on American soil. Nearly 3,000 people killed, a nation in shock. The U.S. invaded Afghanistan within weeks. But 20 years later, Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistan, not Afghanistan. The Taliban returned the moment America left, so what was the point? Then came Iraq. Weapons of mass destruction, that was the excuse. But they were never found, no WMDs, no 9/11 connection. No threat, still the war happened. Because Vice President Dick Cheney's former company, Halliburton, got no bid contracts worth billions. Oil fields were secured. Defense budgets ballooned, and America spent over $2 trillion on that war. Today, many of those same people who pushed for war work for think tanks, defense companies, private intelligence firms. They sit on the boards of Raytheon, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman. They rotate from government to industry and back again. It's not just corruption, it's a war economy. And the public, they keep paying the price. Higher taxes, veterans with PTSD, decades of destabilized regions. So let's ask the real question, who benefits from these wars? Is it the soldiers who fight them? The families who lose loved ones? Or is it the banks that fund reconstruction? The oil companies that get new drilling rights? The weapons manufacturers that see their stock prices triple? War is no longer just a geopolitical tool. It's a business model, a profit machine, and it runs on your patriotism, your fear, your silence. Because every time history repeats, the price is paid in blood and the profit is made in gold. You've been told these wars were necessary, that they were noble, that they were just. But history tells a different story. Every major war America fought had signs, warnings, and motivations far darker than we were told. This isn't just a story of deception. It's the blueprint of an empire. And until we recognize it, we're doomed to repeat it. So next time you hear the drums of war beating, ask yourself not, who are we fighting, but who profits if we do? Because the real enemy might not be on the other side of the battlefield. It might be in the boardrooms of America. If this opened your eyes, don't let it stop here. Like this video, subscribe to Ancient Light. And remember, history isn't just about what happened. It's about what they wanted you to believe.